to Christian International and a teaching series by Dr. Bill Hamon. Let us now join Dr. Hamon as he teaches the series, Pitfalls for Prophets.
Balaam, we're hoping that we get some insight on how many M's out of order does it take to be called a false prophet. And it wasn't until this morning when I was studying that I realized we do have a character in the Bible that gives us some insight to how many M's can be out of order and how many M's could be in good order and you still be called a true or false prophet. And this is interesting. I mean, this one will shake you up. You're going to realize how relevant are the pitfalls to prophets that we've been dealing with every morning, dealing with human character, root attitudes, character flaws, and motivation, and character, and ethics, and integrity, and all those areas we've been dealing with every morning from 9 to 10. You're going to realize how important it is. Before I launch into that, I want to just finish one thought that I overlooked, or I got on the wrong page when I started, on the Achan and Judah's character flaws, attitude, and root problems. So get your notes out or your blank sheet of paper, and let me just read this one little point. I was looking for that all through when I was reading it, and I knew I'd missed it somewhere, but I started the page later than I was supposed to. So put your mind back to yesterday morning, and we're dealing with Achan and Judah's character flaw, but Achan mainly, and I want to bring out a point concerning the prophetic movement. So if you'll just take notes on this, it'll be fine. I'll read up to this and this is give it to you because I'm going to really have to cover territory fast because there's about 10 pages of this. Achan's sinful act was that of taking from the city of Jericho a Babylonian garment, 2-pound bar of gold, and about 8 pounds of silver. What made it so sinful is that God had declared all the gold, silver, bronze, and iron was devoted to God's treasury. And if any took it for himself, he would be accursed and would also incur God's curse upon all of Israel. Everything else, including all humans and animals in Jericho, were to be killed and then destroyed by fire. If any broke God's commandments, they would receive the same judgment that was decreed for the Jerichoans. Now remember this, at the beginning of the conquest of Canaan, remember the prophetic movement has crossed us over Jordan and has begun the conquest of Canaan. And the decree went forth that any Israeli found guilty of taking that which belonged to God's house and putting it in their own ministry, in their own life, in their own mind, for their own selfish purposes, would incur the same judgment that was decreed upon the Jerichoans and the Ites of Canaan. Achan did so. He took of the accursed thing. And he and his wife, his sons, his daughters, all his animals were stoned to death by the Israelis and then burned and covered by a heap of stones. Write this down. God's severest judgments are manifest when he's establishing his people in a new place of restoration, truth, and ministry. Now get this. The reason God was so tough and rough and hard on Achan and why he was so rough on Ananias and Sapphira was because there is a divine principle that when God is establishing a new move of God or a new truth or is bringing the church and the world into a new dimension, into a new dispensational or restorational or progression toward his eternal purpose being fulfilled, when God's doing something brand new, his severest judgments come into being to establish that ministry in integrity and truth and righteousness, and he'll make believers out of everybody and put the fear of God upon them. Now we are in the prophetic movement. We've crossed over Jordan. God had Achan killed. His wife, his children, his animals, everything that belonged to him was stoned by the rest of the Israelis and killed. You should praise God. I'm glad I'm not serving the God of the Old Testament. You're serving the same God that they served, except there's a new covenant of mercy and grace to give us a cushion and a go-between and a cleansing and a purging. But God has not changed from the Old Testament to the New. He changed his covenant. But he's the same yesterday, today. God changeth not. Some people think we got a God of the Old Testament and a God of the New Testament. We have one God. And we just saw his one side in the Old Testament where he says loving mercy side and forgiving side in the New Testament, more so. But he forgave in the Old. Did he forgive Nineveh when Jonah prophesied to him? See, we have the character of God. But in the New Covenant we have forgiveness. So you say in the new covenant, it's sloppy agape, Santa Claus Jesus loves everybody, all roads lead to the same place, just do the best of your ability. Jesus wouldn't deny anybody. Anybody knocks on the door of heaven after death and comes up, he's going to let them in. He's got a big mushy heart and he can't say no. He can say no, and he will cast people in the lake of fire and they'll burn forever and ever and ever. Everybody's not going to make it to heaven that's honest and sincere. You can be honestly and sincerely wrong with Mohammedan or Mormon or Jehovah's Witness or a false saint or prophet in the church of believers in Jesus Christ. All right. In the New Testament, under grace, Jesus has died on the cross, shed his last blood, rose again, established the church. Church is getting on the move. We're in the church age. And Ananias and Sapphira come and lie against the Holy Ghost. And Peter says, as an apostle of God, you're a dead man. You're a dead woman. Judgment fell upon him, and God restored the reverential fear of God. God struck Ananias and Sapphira dead for being deceitful. Everybody say deceitful. Wasn't adultery, wasn't fornication, wasn't murder. A simple little act of being deceitful about money and possessions. For being deceitful when he was establishing the New Testament church. God's purpose for this is to produce the reverential fear of God. And one thing we did not have in the last few movements is a real reverential fear of God. In the great holiness movement, Welsh revival, the reverential fear of God was there. But in the Pentecostal, charismatic, and faith movements, there wasn't that reverence. It was God bless me, God take care of me, God make me happy, God fulfill me, God you're my servant, now serve me well. But God's changing the order back again and saying God is the central, God is eternal, and God's almighty. And we better walk holy and righteously and with reverential fear before Him. God's purpose for this is to produce the reverential fear of God within the people and let all know that He is serious. He's serious about principles He's establishing for His new movement. I believe the prophetic movement has brought the church across Jordan in its restorational journey to possess its promised Canaan land. If this is a divinely established fact, if we are correct in our restorational perspective, that the church in its restorational move from Egypt to Canaan has now crossed over Jordan, and we're in Canaan fighting giants. Canaan's not a type of heaven. You're not going to have to drive out giants to possess heaven. You are going to have to drive out ites to possess your promised Canaan land here and God's eternal purpose for planet Earth. So then, if this is a divinely established fact, then that means judgment has begun at the house of God. Let's put 1 Peter 4:17 down there. It says judgment must begin where? And whose house are you? God, you're God's what? House. So who's He talking to? You and me. And it says if the righteous scarcely make it. It's such a straight and narrow way. If the righteous scarcely make it, where should the sinner in the church and the ungodly in the church appear? And in the world. Jesus said straight and narrow is the way that leads to life. The last move of God, just before the last move of God, that come to kind of simultaneous, is a resurrection life and supernatural, immortal, not before immortality, is a supernatural resurrection life demonstration beyond your wildest imagination. If I told you all the things that's going to happen, you'd think I had fairy tales and I was going off in space land and had watched too many science fiction movies. But there is things going to happen that you can't even talk about yet. But it's going to be supernatural. I mean, God's going to manifest His church like He never did, even in His own body or in the early church. God says there's a generation never been like it and never be again. In the last days, there's going to be a generation that's going to so magnify and glorify and portray God's power and glory that there's going to be the greatest revival come across this nation and the world that we've ever seen. And more people is going to be saved in the last generation of the moral church than we've seen in the whole restoration and the whole age of the church. And judgments are going to be in the Lamb. And judgments begin at the house of God. And His severity in judging all disobedience has begun to be manifest in the church since 1988 when the prophetic movement was birthed. Look what's happened. Just since the prophets have been prophesying for a long time, but in 1988 the prophetic movement came out of the wilderness and was proclaimed. Like Jesus, after He was baptized, came forth. The prophetic movement was birthed and came manifest to the world. And God started moving all over the nations of the world. And what's happened since 1988 when prophets started prophesying to the valley of dry bones? There's been a shaking, right? What's the first thing that happens when the prophets start, company of prophets start prophesying? There's a great noise. We have the great noise of the word of the Lord. Then there's the great shaking. And God is shaking the communist empire down. Are you hearing me? I've been in contact with some people over in Eastern Europe, and there have been prophets over there prophesying. We're not just a unique. We're not a company unto ourselves. It's a worldwide, universal company of prophets. Where they know us or know you or know them, they're there. I've heard reports. Berlin Wall has been broken down, right? Every dictator's come down. where Noriega, what country was he in? Panama? Nicaragua? Who was that in Nicaragua? Ortega came down. Philippines, I don't know where the Philippines was before that. Of course, it might have been a little later. But there's a whole alignment of nations and shaking. God's shaking everything that can be shaken, that which cannot be shaken may remain. It's doing it in the nations. He's doing it in the world. Did you know God shut down every empire of man? Look in the religious world. Do we have nothing but big leaders come tumbling down to immorality? God says, I'm going to put the fear of God back in the church. Let me tell you something. I really felt strong in the spirit. God says we as prophets are not going to be able to get by with anything. What did Jesus say? Straight and narrow is the way that leads to life. Every move of God, the way gets straighter and narrower. Straighter and narrower. Straighter and narrow. And the last generation will be given the fullness of God. And the much given, much is required. If we're coming to perfection of power, perfection of wisdom, perfection of maturity, we're coming to perfection of holiness, purity, death, the self. And we're coming to Galatians 2:20, one way or the other. That I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live, but it's not I that liveth, but Christ that liveth in me. In the life which I now live, I live by the Son of God which loved me and gave himself for me. To live is Christ. Do you believe we could come to that experientially? I just want to share with you here that divine principle, when God is established in a new thing in the earth, and it's very serious to him, he puts up with no foolishness, and there will be examples of judgment. We've seen it through the national leaders in the church world. God shook everything. You remember what they call it, Black Monday? That's all since 88, wasn't it? Well, that Monday when everything went, God shook the economy. I mean, he just shook them to the core, scared them. We're going back into, he shook them in the world, in the economy, in finances, in nations. God is shaking all over, that all people may know that God is God, and it's not your faith or your grace or your glory. It's him, Jesus. He's still God of the universe and God of the nation of the world, and he's a God of the church, and he's going to show himself God in the church. Hallelujah. Okay, just a little exhortation there to encourage you. Hallelujah. That God's going to kill you before it's over with. All right, open your... you don't have your Bible, so... I mean, you don't need them open right now. I'm going to give you a scripture later. I've got... you see all those scriptures there on your outline. I wish we had time to read Numbers 20, the chapter 22 through 25, but... And then Numbers 31, 8 through 16, and Deuteronomy 23, 5, 6, and all of those. To get the full benefit, because I'm already got 10, 15 minutes gone, and I haven't even got started on this, and I've got 12 pages here. To get the benefit of this story, how many know the story of Balaam fairly well? So we'll have to trust, and you can go back and get more out of it after we study this. Now get your notes out. I'll give you 4 points right quick. That's not on your outline. All right, you'll have to listen because I'm going to read this, because if I try to preach it, it'll take me 3 hours. The prophet Balaam should be thoroughly studied by every prophet and prophetess and prophetic minister who wants to avoid the pitfalls of becoming a prophet who can give a true word of the Lord but become a false prophet in his personal attitude and way of life. We judge, evaluate, or determine the... Number one. Okay, here's the way you judge and evaluate. We have 4 different things you judge and evaluate, and different ways you judge and evaluate or determine. Judge, evaluate, and determine the accuracy of these 4 areas. Number 1, the message. A man's message. We judge, evaluate, and determine the spiritual accuracy of the message in a prophecy with scriptures. You do not judge by the witness of your head. You've heard me say over and over again, if you prophesy to a devout Catholic, and they use the word Mary is just another woman, don't worship Mary, her head will not witness. She'll say, I don't witness that. I just went cold all over when he said that. Sure, you just threw a bucket of water on a religious spirit. Are you following me? You don't witness with your head. You say, I don't believe that's God. You go to the Bible. You do not check out doctrine and prophecy, and whether it's doctrinally right, by what you agree with. You go back to the Word and search it. And prove it by the Word. You prophesy to a devout, dedicated Baptist who's been, gone to the fighting Sunday schools, been brainwashed with the speaking in tongues is of the devil. You prophesy over him and say, and you shall speak in other tongues that you don't know anything about. And, I don't witness. He'll go cold all over. He'll just shiver and shake and try to get out of there before you put that demon in him. You got to check it out with the Word. All right. Number 2. Statements about past and present things. Statements about past and present things in prophetic flow, in a prophetic utterance. statements about past and present things are judged by the facts of life. It either is or it isn't. It's just judged by the facts of life. And if it says, you are this, or this is true. Now, you may have blind sides and blind spots in your seeing yourself, and it'll take somebody else to help you see that that is a fact. But if somebody says, I look down and say, God shows me, sister, that you're 5'6", and and I start describing her, and she's there more than 5'6" or something, and it's facts, right? I see you, or if I start prophesying, I see you've got 2 children. One's got black hair, and one's got the blonde hair, and one's 16, the other's 14, and one's a girl, and one's a boy, and they're 2 boys, 6 foot tall. I missed it. She's got 2 children, but I missed the detail. That's facts, right? If you're giving facts, it's judged by the facts. If you're giving spiritual possibilities, that's different. But if you're giving facts, black and white, natural facts. If I reach out and prophesy and say, sister, God showed me you got blue eyes, and I look over there and she's got green, I don't have to say, everybody's looking crooked. If I said blue, they're blue. You judge it by the facts of life. All right? Number 3, you judge future things that are not now in existence, that says this will be, and this will happen, this will come to pass, and this will be, and you judge by whether it comes to pass or not. And you can't judge it till it gives it time to come to pass. If you put a date or time on, you say by December the 1st, there will be war in Iraq, and there will be a hot war going on. Then by December the 1st, if they're not in battle and a hot war going on, you missed it. You can give all the excuses in the world and say, well, somebody prayed and postponed it, but you missed the fact. The fact is, your facts didn't agree with the way it came to pass. All right? And then, number 4, the prophet or the prophetess, the prophesier, the one that prophesies, the prophet or the prophetess. You judge them by their character and the spirit of wisdom. Now, we've already dealt with what they say. We've dealt with the content of what they say, whether it's facts, doctrine, or biblical perspectives, or future things. Now, that's there. You judge prophecy different than you judge the prophet. And we're going to show you here a man that's a true person, but a false prophet. No, wait a minute, I gotta say, he's a true prophesier, not a person. He's a true prophesier, true content, true message, but he's a false person or a false prophet. Get that right now. I said it wrong first time. He gives proper content in his message. He doesn't say anything but what the Lord tells him to say. He's accurate. He's right on. But he's a false prophet. All right? Okay. We judge the prophet or prophetess by their character. 1, the spirit of wisdom. Number 2. Number 3, the fruit of the Holy Spirit in their personal lives, and even the fruit that remains after the manifestations of their miraculous ministry has moved on down the road. 1 Corinthians 13 says there are those who can come in and just get you stirred up and get you shouting, dancing, screaming, hollering, running the aisles, falling out. Few people get healed and blessed, refreshed, and they go down the road, but there's been a spirit in them. If they transferred or they left there, an attitude or something, and the fruit does not remain. All it starts falling. It's a gonging cymbal and a clanging noise, and it gets people excited, but when it's all the froth and foam is moved, there's very little liquid left. Are you following me? All right. As one reads all the scripture, I'm going to have to read quite a bit of this, so listen keenly and quickly. Take notes fastly. Maybe it'll all be there lastly or something. As one reads all the scriptural references concerning Balaam in the Old Testament, everybody say Old Testament. We find and then we start reading the New Testament, we find pitfalls. We find the following pitfalls and character flaws in his life. He was very ambitious. Now we find this in the New Testament. We don't find it in the Old. Except after you have to go to the New Testament to interpret what really happened in the Old Testament. He was very ambitious for fame, fortune, and prestige. Remember the 10 M's we dealt with the last 3 sessions. He had the proper prophet principle. Everybody say proper prophet principle. Oh, you got it. Not too tired, are you? He had the proper prophet principle of not prophesying anything except that which God gave him to say. What did he tell King Balak? I only say what God puts in my word to say, no more, no less. That's better than most of us do today. He declared to Balak he could prophesy no differently, even if he gave him half his kingdom and great possessions. Sounds very, but he had enough of the M's for maintaining true prophet status out of order to cause him to be called a false prophet by Jesus, Peter, and Jude in the New Testament. His aims of, if you're following the outline, number 3, his aims of message, ministry, manhood, and morality. Now, morality in the sense there was no evidence he was committing adultery or fornication. He wasn't in any sexual perversion, for as the Scripture implies. So you need to add morality to the manhood, those 4. Those 4 was in on. His message was right on. His content was solid. He didn't deviate from what the true word of the Lord was. His ministry was effective. His manhood, as far as a real man and stood for firm and steadfast and wasn't moved or swayed, seemingly, and his morality. You'd think if a man had all of that, he should be a true prophet. But his aims of motive, are you watching your number 3 there? And you can add, I think I had one more there. But his aims of motive, maturity, methods, and money were not in divine order. Motive, maturity, methods, and money. Though he would speak nothing but pure prophecy, yet he was self-determined. Oh, we're going way back to some other pitfalls now of Achan and Judas problems. Self-determined and lusted enough for power and possessions to persist in hoping God would allow him to prophesy that which would result in Balak giving him the rewards of position and possession. He didn't do it, but he wanted God to let him. I've tried to deal with prophets. They held their integrity outside, but inside they wanted God to let them prophesy to some rich man that would give them $1 million, prophesy to somebody and they'd give them that brand new Cadillac. In their heart they lusted after those things, and God, somehow my miraculous prophetic ministry has got to procure for me some position and fame and materialism, and they wanted it so bad, but they feared God enough they couldn't say and prophesy exactly except what God said, but it was in their heart all the time, and eventually it destroyed them on the battlefield of life. In the Old Testament, you got by if you didn't do it. In the New Testament, Jesus said, if you even think adultery in your heart, you're already guilty. If you think murder in your heart, you're already guilty. In the New Testament, well, even in the Old Testament, God said man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks on the heart. And in the New Testament, not only man looks on it, but God judges the heart. Because the heart's what he's going to work with forever. He judges your spirit. Okay, let's keep moving. God told Balaam when he first inquired that he was not to go with Balak to curse Israel. God told Balaam when he first inquired that he was not. Everybody say not. He was not to go with Balak to curse Israel. After further offers of rewards, he inquired of God again. Now what did we discover with the children of Israel wanting the king and other principles, and then the children of Israel wanting meat and many other? We found that if you persist, God will send a prophet along to prophesy you can have what you want to your own destruction. If you persist, I want something, I want meat. That's okay, I'll give you meat. Not for 1 day, not for 2, not for 10, not for 15. I'm going to give you meat and fill you up until it comes back out of your nostrils to make you so sick. I'm going to make you sick of meat. You wish you never asked for meat. Then he said he gave them meat. Who sent the quail? Could their faith produce that? Could they do that by their own desires or manipulation? Did they manipulate God by wanting God to say something that they pulled it out of God and he prophesied out of his own heart? I guess we discussed the principles. Could it possible when you lay hands on somebody that they have a strong desire and you pick up on their strong desire and prophesy their desires to the pure mind of God? You remember we dealt with so many problems this week and possibilities and all that. We've just dug in every avenue area. But I just got a new thought there. Did they pull out of God to say something that wasn't according to the will of God? And let's think about that. Did their actions and complaining cause God to do something he knew wasn't best and didn't want to do, but he did it? Did he give them a king and didn't want to, and then he sent a storm and blew all their crops over, show his anger? Didn't he say, manna's all you need? You want meat? I'll give you meat. Then what does the Bible say? To show that God really didn't want to do it and he's angry that they made him do it, or I don't know how you do that, but he did it. It's in there. What did he do while they were still eating the meat with the quail legs hanging out their mouth and eating away at the meat? What did happen while they were eating the meat? God slew the most gluttonous. Eating away, and God said, kill them, sick of them. Now there he was sick of them. Because they were making him, I know God never gets sick. Well, no, I'm not for sure. When they're sick in the sense, not physical, but he gets heart sick. That's what I'm talking about. When I say sick, I'm talking heart sick. God gets angry. Does God get angry? Did you know anger is a character of God? Did you know judgment's a character of God? Did you know hate's a character of God? You can find as many places where God says, I hate this, I hate covetousness, I hate unrighteousness, I hate idolatry, I hate, homosexuality, I hate. God hates unrighteousness. How many want to be anointed like Jesus was? What does the Bible say? Wherefore God hath anointed him above his fellow, because he loved righteousness. But what's the other half? Hated iniquity. We have learned to love righteousness. Now in the charismatic prophetic movement, we've got to learn to have an intense righteous indignation and hate the very garment spotted with sin. We're going to quit playing around with sin, or God's going to put a heap of stones on top of us. He's not going to. Judgment's begun at the house of God. It's already begun. All right? Now, what God was doing is checking Balaam out. We found out God will check you out. If you want what you want it bad enough, he'll give it to you, then judge you for it. So that's not fair. Yes, it is. In God's economy. Who are you going to tell? Are you going to argue with God or how he sets up his things? He knows you and he knows himself. God told Balaam that he could go if the men came for him again. Now, we don't know whether... There is no indication that this confirmation came before Balaam saddled his donkey to go to Balak to prophesy against Israel. For Balaam, if God permitted. Write this down. A self-willed prophet takes a mile when God gives an inch. A Balaam-type self-willed prophet will take a mile when God gives an inch. God says, if they come back, you can go. He grabs that as an okay and takes off. Do you ever have one of your children? Mama, can I go? Well, you can go if you... Bye! Boom! No, wait a minute. Lamentations. You got to be back at 10:30. You got to have somebody with you. Bang, bang, bang. But if you just open your mouth, boom. That's the reason you prophesy to people, and they hear one little thing that seems to give an okay. They ignore all the rest. They grab that inch and run a mile with it. You give them all they're looking for. I've given a flow of prophecy to people. All they heard is that one little thing. Go. They wanted to leave the church, and God says, you're now under discipline. You need to do this and that. They didn't hear anything but what they wanted. They grabbed that and ran off and said, Pastor, here, the prophet said I was to go. And they wouldn't let him read the whole prophecy. Just, if you're a self-willed, self-determined, I want my way, do my own thing, and I want what I want, and God, you better provide it for me, or I'm going to backslide. You remember that other syndrome we talked about? A self-willed prophet, a Balaam-type self-willed prophet, takes a mile when God gives an inch. God became angry because Balaam went ahead and anyhow. Now, isn't that... God said, if they ask you to go, go. They came back and asked him, and he went, then God got mad because he went. God became angry because he went. You say, well, once... We're going to learn when God says for the first time, no, no means no. Did he know it was God that said no? Did any indication he was confused whether God or the devil or flesh was talking to him? He knew it was God. How many's raised children? Raising children? Have you ever had a child when you said no, said, yes, mother, yes, dad? It's something they want real bad. I want that toy. I've been seeing it advertised on TV for months. Can I have that? No, you can't have that. Okay. But I want it. It's nice. They'll argue with you and debate with you. Then you say no. Then you explain. Then you say no. My daughter, she takes after her dad. She likes to debate and argue. I had a horrible... to live another 15 years and have 10 atrocities come upon Israel that was produced because he lived another 10 years. And one of them being Manasseh, that brought such a wrath of God and anger of God that he said, I will not repent again. Israel is going into bondage, though Josiah rose, which was as righteous a king after that as David, and yet God wouldn't change his mind. All right, we discovered all of that. Now, okay, here's another point to ponder. I remember the story of the mule. He was on a donkey, and he started out, and he saw that donkey saw the angel there with a flaming sword. And Balaam was beating his mule over the head, his donkey, and she kept going. And then the angel just, this is interesting. You remember I told you about how there's very little level between man and angels and eternal. I mean, we're mortal, they're immortal, but we're on the same level. In fact, we're on a higher level. We're sons of God, they're angels. See, so we need to we forget that spooky spiritual realm. They're real creations. They're real people. They're real angels, cherubim, stuff. They're real God. It's a real Jesus. We're real people, amen. And they operate a lot like we do. We act the same way. Talk. We was made in God's own image and likeness. We have His character. Even a fallen man has a certain amount of ways that God wanted man to function, react, and be. And the donkey saw the angel, and he veered off and doing a donkey. I can see Balaam pulling his reins around to the next, laying on the shoulder, and the donkey's still going off this way. Finally, he slaps that donkey around. Then the angel moves off and says, "Okay, donkey, I love you, but I'm going to kill that prophet. It's on your back." He backs off, and they go down, and there's a wall here for the vineyard, and there's a wall over here, and it gets narrower and narrower. That's what I said. God's going to get us in a narrow spot. He's going to meet us on the road like He met, what's his name, Moses, on the way to Egypt at the end. How many know about Exodus 4:24? God met Moses at the end and sought to kill him. And Zippy said, "Oh God, my husband's dying. What do I do?" And who do you pray to when God's the one killing him? All right. And God's going to get us on a narrow way and meet us where there's no turning right or left. And God's, okay, you and me is going to settle this issue, and we're going to finalize it right here. And God's got a donkey experience for every one of us. Anyhow, the angel stands right this time, and the donkey sees he's got his drawn sword, and he says, "Goodbye, whole world, goodbye." And Balaam began to wham, wham, slap, beat over the head. And the donkey turns around and said, "What have I've been faithful. Where have I failed you? Why are you beating me over the head?" And he was so incensed, so wrapped up in his determination to go his own way, that he didn't even realize the donkey was talking to him unusually. And he argued with the donkey and debated with the donkey. Finally realized, a donkey? Wait a minute, the donkey's talking to me. Something else going on here. And the donkey said, "You better believe it." And he rammed his leg against the wall and almost crushed it and said, "Wake up, man, or we're both dead." And then you know how it went. Okay, now, all right, let me read this. A prophet demonstrates the character flaw of Balaam when he allows the influence of the rewards of riches to cause him to end up displeasing God in his striving to please man for earthly gain. Balaam tried to please God and love mammon at the same time, and Jesus says it's impossible. You cannot love God and have Him first and material possessions first at the same time. One's got to be secondary and one's got to be crucified. He had the root problem of what Paul calls the root of all evil, and we dealt with this yesterday on the M of money. The love of money, 1 Timothy 6:10. I believe he held secret resentment in his heart against Jehovah for not allowing him to prophesy anything that Balak desired against Israel, which caused him to lose all of Balak's promises of riches and promotion. He could not prophesy anything except what God told him, but he finally bypassed that restriction and probably had some reward for it by not prophesying in the name of Jehovah, but pulled up on his prophetic insight and gave counsel to the Moabites and Midianites how they could destroy the Israelites by causing them to sin against their God by adultery and idolatry. Prophet Balaam finally received the rewards and riches he wanted, but he was also destroyed with the Midianites when God's judgment had come upon them and they were wiped out. Turn to Revelation 2:14, I believe it is, and let's look there. He gets mentioned. Wouldn't it be wonderful to be mentioned in the Bible as long as it's not as like Balaam or somebody like that? Hallelujah. Now Balaam worshipped Jehovah God as far as we know. He knew Jehovah God. Do you know the history of the Midianites? Midianites originated from Keturah, Abraham's second wife. After Abraham got married, after Sarah died, Abraham married again, and he had 6 sons. After he was about 150 years old, he got married again and produced 6 sons through Keturah. One of those was Midian, of which Moses' wife was a descendant. Zipporah was a Midianite. And so were these Midianites. So they knew Jehovah. They knew the covenant of Abraham. They knew the truth, but they had a perversion in it. Okay? Revelations 2:14. Writing to the church of Pergamos. But I have a few things against you, because you have there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak, used his prophetic perspective to teach him, to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornications. He would not prophesy anything, but he finally, because he was a manipulator, because he was selfish, because he was covetous, he finally moved in and took that action. Now let's read while we're right there, Peter. 2 Peter. What's that other scripture there? I don't have it open to that. Is it 2? Let's start with 2 Peter chapter 2. Here's the Balaam type characters, what the Bible calls them. They're a natural brute beast made to be taken and destroyed. They speak evil of the things that they understand not. Did you ever think, strange to me, people talk about a false prophet, and they always show somebody beyond them out here in the new move of God. How about, as far as I'm concerned, one of the greatest false prophets that produced some of the greatest deception and the greatest problems and confusion in the body of Christ is the man that wrote the book, Deception of Christianity, or whatever it was. The book itself. The man that uses accusing everybody else of being a false prophet is probably one. The man that's preaching on adultery all the time is probably because he's in adultery. The man that got exposed lately, what did he preach the hardest against? Pornography, this worldliness, this carnal lustfulness. Because that's what he was fighting against the hardest. And that's what had him the strongest. And people, all they see is false is because you see the reflection out of your own soul. And that's the reason I like to preach a true Christ and true prophets rather than false prophets and false Christ. You don't hear me talking about antichrist, false prophets much. I just believe turn the light on, the darkness is exposed. I'd rather turn the light on than beat the darkness. And when they try to get you to learn how to recognize counterfeit money, I was excitedly impressed. But when I studied it out and discovered that the government, when they're training people to recognize counterfeit money, I thought they'd expose them to every type and every possibilities that counterfeit money could be. According to what I read, they don't even let them ever touch anything but the truth. They let them handle nothing but the truth. Then the moment the false comes in, they're so sensitive and so accustomed to the truth, they recognize anything that's contrary to color, content, or texture immediately. And brother and sister, if we get so involved in true prophecy and true prophets and a true move of God and a true anointing, we don't have to worry about the false. The moment we come in contact with, our spirit will witness. It won't feel right. It won't taste right. It won't look right. We'll recognize the counterfeit for what it is. The people that talk about counterfeit and walk in counterfeit and smile and breathe counterfeit and that's all they know, they won't know the true from the false. Okay, now, when reading the account we're in Peter. I want to read this right to you. These are natural brute beasts made to be taken and destroyed. What a statement. They speak evil of the things that they understand not and shall utterly perish in their own corruption and shall receive the reward of unrighteousness as they that count it pleasure to riot in the daytime. Spots they are and blemishes. This is what Tom got. You remember that thought the other night? Jesus said he's going to have a church without spot or blemish. Here's some spots and blemishes we hadn't thought about. False Christians, false prophets, false teachers, and false apostles in the church. Spots they are and blemishes. Sporting themselves with their own deceivings. My. Sporting themselves with their own deceivings while they feast with you, having eyes full of adultery, and they cannot cease from sin, beguiling unstable souls, and heart they have exercised with covetous practices, and they've cursed the children of God, which have forsaken the right way and have gone astray, following the way of who? Balaam, the son of Besor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness, but was rebuked for his iniquity. The dumb ass, speaking with man's voice, forbade the madness of the prophet. These are wells without water, clouds are carried with a tempest, to whom the midst of darkness is reserved forever. You think God's getting serious? Is that New Testament I'm reading? It's not an Old Testament judgment God. This is a New Testament grace God. All right. Hallelujah. I'm going to preach it under, and Apostle Don Anderson is going to preach it back up, okay? Now, when reading the account in Numbers chapters 22 through 24, one does not see Balaam looking like a false prophet or a wrongly motivated prophet. No, if you just read the Old Testament, he'd have to, well, let me just read it. I've got it here. It is not until Jesus, Peter, and Jude make their comments about him that you begin to see Prophet Balaam as God saw inside him. If one judged Prophet Balaam by the accuracy of his prophecies only, then you would have to declare him a true prophet. What's the only thing the average person knows about prophets and prophecy? Deuteronomy 18, if it does not come to pass, then it's not a true prophet. And so therefore, if it doesn't work out like I thought it should, then I declare you a false prophet, and I feel so justified because it didn't come to pass like I thought. That's one small detail in evaluating and determining true prophets. Everything he said came to pass. His content was right. Those 4 M's was in order. What M's did God really look at? If one judged probably by the accuracy of his prophecies only, then you would have to declare him a true prophet. He prophesied only that which God spake to him, even though he was offered great riches to prophesy differently. I was impressed with Balaam when I read it in the Old Testament. When I got the New, I thought, wait a minute, God, what do you base that on, God? What do you base that on, Peter? What do you base it? Jesus said it in Revelation, Jude said it, and Peter said it. How many think the mouth of 3 witnesses that I'd agree he's a false prophet? But you'd never get it from the Old Testament. In fact, he's the only prophet to give a messianic prophecy in the book of Numbers. We use his prophecy as some of the messianic prophecies from the Old Testament. In fact, he was the greatest prophet among his peers. Let me just say this. One desperate need, one reason that we need a network of prophets. As long as you're a lone prophet out there, traveling, and you're the only one and the only one you see and hear, you become convinced you're the greatest. You got the best, the most. That's the reason you need to get around. We have a whole company of prophets here. We're all great and we're all terrible. See, when I travel, and I never get to hear anybody preach but me, I hear the best preaching possible. But I also get the worst preaching possible. See, if I'm preaching, I've traveled and preached for 4 or 5 years. And everywhere I go, I do the preaching. You know what? My wife only hears me preach. I only hear me preach. And not too long you can get convinced I've got the truth, because that's the only thing I hear. It must be right, because I've heard nothing else, because you've listened to nothing else but yourself. That's the reason you need to come to a meeting like this. Several of the preachers told me it's so good to come and just be a part of the congregation and a part of those priests and be among my peers rather than be the sole authority, wisdom, and knowledge of the head of the church where I locally minister. We need to get them. When I go among with Earl Polk and Bishop Mears and Bishop Benson Hossa and Brother McAllister and those brethren, and I sit among especially these others, and I sit there, I'm a junior. They're all in their 60s just about. Well, I think Ida Hossa is younger than I am. But, he's great. He's got 5,000 churches, 5 million saints, and they talk about these great things. All of a sudden, I'm here. I'm bishop over the MPM. I'm a great man of God. And with wisdom, you look up to me and respect me. And, I go there. I'm a pipsqueak prophet from down somewhere in a little old place in Florida. And it's good for my ego. It's good for my keeping adjusted. And everybody needs to be related to somebody that you can come in that's bigger and mightier and doing more than you are. And yours don't look so great. It keeps you on a balance. Keeps you with a sane estimate of yourself. All right. He prophesied on us. Let's go. In fact, he is the only prophet to give a messianic prophecy in the book of Numbers. In fact, he was the greatest prophet among his peers in his day. Then on what basis does the New Testament writer declare him to be a false prophet? It is only perceived by God's spirit of discernment of the heart and motive. Scriptures declare that man judges by outward looks and performance, but that God judges the heart, and God weighs the what? What's Proverbs say? God weighs the spirit. Can God weigh your spirit? Do you know the psychics over the years in their special schools have done experiments to try to weigh a human body when they die to see if you can weigh the spirit? And they found there is a fraction difference in the weight of the body when the spirit leaves. They actually have proven it. God weighs the spirit. He knows how much it weighs. 1/10 of an ounce or whatever. Some of you may weigh less than that. I don't know. You got a heavy, maybe you die with a heavy spirit, it really goes out big. All right. Oh, Lord, help us. God judges the motive behind the performance. In the book of Revelation, it says, every man's eternal reward and destiny is determined by his deeds. Deeds are more than actions. They are an equation of M plus A equals D. What is that? M plus A equals D. Motive plus action combined equals a deed. A motive is only half, action is only half. Motive plus action equals deed. But if one half is not spendable. If you split a dollar bill in two or split a coin in two, one half doesn't work. Balaam had 4 in order, 4 out of order. 50-50 won't work. 50% accuracy is not enough. 50% right with God is not enough. 50% more. It's coming to 100% in this day and hour. In judging whether a person is a true or false prophet, God evaluates both the prophet's motive and his ministry. There are several scriptural incidents of seemingly right men giving false prophecies and are called false prophets. But Balaam is the only one who portrays the reality that a prophet can give accurate prophecies but be a wrong person on the inside enough to be called a false prophet. Now we've been all week asking how many M's have to be out of order to call a person a false prophet. The average person would not realize that a Balaam prophet is a false prophet in our day and hour. For most people only know the scripture, Deuteronomy 18:22, that declares a person's true prophet status is determined by whether the word he gives is accurate and comes to pass. Balaam only spoke God's directed words, and they came to pass. Based on Deuteronomy 18:22, would we have to say Balaam's a true prophet? Right? What he said came to pass. What he said was accurate. Factual accurate. And Messiah did come later by future. We now, on this side of Calvary, can say the morning star prophecy he gave of Jesus arising came to pass. His facts about the situation, what was going on, what God would do and wouldn't do, was accurate. Based on all of that, we'd have to call him a true prophet. But Jesus, Jude, and Peter called him a false prophet. But the New Testament uses him as an example of what a prophet should not be and do. God is more concerned about the purity of the prophet than his prophecies. Write that down. That's worth taking a moment. God's more concerned about the purity of the prophet than his prophecies. He's concerned about both, and both will get you in trouble if you miss either one. But he's more concerned. Like I said, God's more concerned about my spirit than he is my body. I can go to heaven with a sick body, but I can't go to heaven with a sick soul, a sinful soul. God's more concerned about the purity of the prophet than his prophecies, the man and his motives, as well as his message and his ministry. Here are the words of Jesus concerning inward spirit and motivation, and outward appearance and performance. Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are raven wolves. What did Jesus say? Outwardly they're sheep. If they smell right, they feel right, they look right, they blah, 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 right? Blah, blah, you know. Feel me. Oh, yeah, you're so sweet. You just gooey. Blah. Look, my nose, feel my, you know. They got sheep's clothing on, but inwardly, now look. Big teeth. Woof. Ooh. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly, Jesus says, forget that outward great performance, prophesying, casting out devils, and raise the dead as a sense of a security if the inward is not right. Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are raven wolves. You shall know them by their fruits. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? I don't think that's talking about the Episcopalians or Catholics or Baptists or Methodists. It's talking about you and me. We're the prophesiers. And in thy name have cast out devils. That's a faith people and miracle working people and the great evangelists. And in thy name done many wonderful works. And that's the good folks, evangelicals and the humanitarians. And then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you that work iniquity. Now Jesus said this. Sweet Jesus said this. Jesus said a prophet can have the outward clothing and ministry of a sheep, but the inward spirit and motivation of a wolf. Did you get that? He can have the outward clothing and ministry of a sheep, but the inward spirit and motivation of a wolf. Those M's are out of order. These are prophets with accurate prophecies and miraculous works, but not right inside. Not right inside. Righteousness means right in every area. Inside, outside, etc. They at one time went through the spiritual, legal ceremony of being married to the Lord Jesus by being born again and called to the ministry. They took their Christ husband's power of attorney and wrote checks on the bank of heaven and signed it with the name of Jesus. They prophesied and worked wonderful works by God's grace, faith, and divine enablements. But they never allowed Jesus' life and motive to become their motivation and purpose for ministry. The word knew, K-N-E-W, is used in Scripture to convey the intimate relationship between husband and wife, as in Isaac knew his wife, Rebekah. The Balaam ministry has received Christ's power of attorney for powerful performances, but have never allowed the intimate nature and character of Christ to become their inner motivation in life. Therefore, Jesus will say on that day, depart from me, you worker of iniquity, I never knew you. How are we doing? All right, we're going to make it. Prophetic ministers must guard against self-deception, self-justification, and improper motivation. We need others to help us see ourselves in areas where we have blind spots. Prophet Jeremiah said, the heart is desperately wicked, and who can know it? And again, every man is right in his own eyes. Especially semi-charismatic and Pentecostal and prophetic people that move in the gifts of the Spirit and the mind of God get so conceited and so blinded. But God talks to me. God told me. Nothing bugs me more when I run across a prophet with that super spiritual, wolfish air of, God tells me what to do. I'm subject to nobody. Jesus is the only one I give account to. Yeah. And you'll give account to him one day. All right. That is the reason every prophet needs someone he is submitted to and respects enough to listen to instruction and correction, even though we cannot see it as a fact at first. The first MPM minister that we had to bring before the Board of Governors, we had dealt with for 2 years, tried to bring things to his attention. The whole 25 Board of Governors sat there. The man sat there. I said, each Board of Governors, husband and wife, would you tell him what you sense in the Spirit? I have not prompted you. I have not. And I told him. They went around consistently. Everyone said, one of them said, you got a blind spot. You can't see it. Hey, when somebody tells you you got a blind spot, and you say, well, I don't see that. Wake up, wake up. That's the reason you need somebody that you're related to, that you believe loves you enough, and you have confidence enough that if they tell you got a blind spot, you'll let them start working on it to you until the blinders are removed. We sat there, every one of us, and told him. I remember when Kirby Clements gave him the final verdict, so strong, so direct. I said, brother, this is your last chance. God's dealt with you and dealt with you, and God, these brethren want to help you. We want to restore you. And we told him we felt he had a terminal disease. He had a sin, was a sin of Lucifer, pride. It wasn't an outward sin. It wasn't something he'd done. It's something he had inside. It was a wolfish spirit on the inside. Something you couldn't put your finger on except by the Spirit. Like Balaam. There's a Balaam syndrome here. And we dwelt with that thing. He wouldn't see it. He could prophesy as good as any of our NPM ministers. He had miracles. We had 3 people with AIDS got healed in his ministry. I mean, he was doing great things. And we said, brother, this thing is so serious that it needs to be quarantined. It's as serious as though it was a black plague. And if you don't get rid of it, you're going to fall to the condemnation of Lucifer himself. He said, yeah, I recognize that. I see that some. He said, but I'll go pray about it. He went and prayed about it and said, I was praying at home. The Lord spoke to me, arise and go. And he went off and left, would not take the correction, resigned, left. Blind spot, can't see and refuse to see. A Balaam syndrome. That is why in the Christian International Network of Prophetic Ministers, we established the structure of a senior apostolic prophet with a vision and burden for prophetic ministers as president, then a board of governors consisting of anointed and mature apostles, prophets, and pastors to be part of the headship and be a place of accountability and relationship for all ministers of the CIMPM. As bishop of the CIMPM, my personal accountability for the revealing of blind spots and correction into my life are my fellow bishops in the College of Bishops. Most of them are older than me in natural age and years of ministry. If Bishop Earl Park or Bishop Benson Hoster or John Mears or McAllister or Meshagan, any of those brethren came to me and says, Bill Hamon, you've got this and this and this. Man, I'd fall on my face. I'd come back to my board of governors. I'd say, be honest with me. Don't you dare try to make me feel good. You tell me the truth. Is that there? Well, honey, do you see that there? I'd go before God. I'd wait on God. I'd seek God. I'd cry out to God, and I'd ask for help or work. Stop me. I've got a ministry. I'm a ministry. Hey, how about the man? I know you got the sheep clothing. Let's get the wolf out. To summarize, a modern-day prophet with the Balaam syndrome is one who can give a true word of the Lord and is very conscientious to prophesy only what God speaks to him. He fears Jehovah God and can hear from him and speak his word. He moves with accurate words of knowledge and his miracles of healing and deliverance in his ministry. He has the ability to prophesy with great revelation about present and future things. Balaam prophesied the only messianic prophecy recorded in the book of Numbers from Balaam's perspective of himself. Ooh, listen to this. And he had a right to do that. From Balaam's perspective of himself, he was the most and the best among his contemporaries. Every time I find a prophet that rises in our midst and begins to say, I'm the biggest, I'm the greatest, I'm the most, I know pride goeth before a fall and a haughty spirit before destruction. There was seemingly no problem in his life or ministry. But man looks on the outward appearance, but God weighs the spirit and judges the heart motive. Of the 10 M's for judging prophets, Balaam excelled in message and ministry, but his M's of motive, money, methods, and maturity and ministerial ethics were off enough to cause him to be declared in the New Testament as a false prophet, an example used by Jesus of what a prophet should not be and do. God never changes, and Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Modern day Balaam type prophets will be judged the same today by Jesus Christ. I pray for all prophetic ministers, and especially those I'm responsible to in the CIMPM, will be delivered from falling prey to the Balaam syndrome, pitfalls, and inward character flaws. Amen. Everybody say amen.